Good morning to you, and it's Monday morning, and it's me again. Nice to see you, and welcome to our Bible talk for this morning. If I may just give you a couple of notices, if I may. Firstly, vis-a-vis Bible talks in the next few days. The last one of our talks at the moment on the Passion of Christ is mine today and Sue tomorrow, Sue Turner tomorrow, and then we'll have a gap for the Bible talks till the 12th of April. Just give me a break through and after Easter, and then we'll start again, back in John's Gospel again, on the 12th of April. Also, over the next few days, as we approach Holy Week, we go through Holy Week and Easter, we have a wonderful service on Maundy Thursday, 7:30 in the evening, Good Friday, Tenebrae service, 5:30 in the evening, and of course we're in church as well as on stream online on Easter Sunday. If you want to join us for one of the services in church, do please ring or contact the office so we can book you in, but we'd love to see you then on Easter Sunday. So lots of exciting things and great ways of engaging with Holy Week and Easter in the next few days. And we'd love to see you, and we'd be better if you're with us. Enough of the preamble. We are, as I say, working our way through the Passion of Jesus in Luke's Gospel. And so far, Jesus has had the Last Supper, and then he's gone into the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's prayed and agonized there. And then Judas and some soldiers have arrived and taken Jesus away. And they take him, the first place they take him is to the high priest, that's Caiaphas' house. And that was where, as you found out on Friday, Peter denied knowing Jesus, and he denied him 3 times. And it's after that, we're picking it up here. So we're at Caiaphas' house, and it's Luke's Gospel, chapter 22, and I'm starting to read now at verse 63. And I'm going to go to chapter 23, verse 12. Here we go. Chapter 22, verse 63. Now the men who were holding Jesus began to mock him and beat him. They also blindfolded him and kept asking him, "Prophesy, who is it that struck you?" And they kept heaping many insults on him. When day came, the assembly of the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, gathered together, and they brought him to their council. They said, "If you're the Messiah, tell us." He replied, "If I tell you, you will not believe, and if I question you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." All of them asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He said to them, "You say that I am." Then they said, "What further testimony do we need? We've heard it from ourselves from his own lips." Then the assembly rose as a body and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no basis for an accusation against this man." But they were insistent and said, "He stirs up all the people by teaching throughout all Judea from Galilee, where he even began even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he heard that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him off to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at the time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, because he'd been wanting to see him for some time, because he'd heard about him, and he was hoping to see him perform some sign. He questioned him at some length, but Jesus gave him no answer. But the chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Even Herod and his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocking him, and he put an elegant robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. That same day, Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this, they'd been enemies. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So as I say, we are at Caiaphas' house, and Peter has just denied knowing Jesus. And here's where, if you like, the trial of Jesus kind of begins in earnest. And so they're taken to Caiaphas' house, and they arrive, and as soon as they beat him up, badly. And they put him. I've actually been to Caiaphas' house. I was there just a few months ago, and in the middle of this there is this pit, and you can dread to think what goes into this pit. And what they used to do with prisoners is they put ropes around their shoulders and lower them in, because the problem at the time was you couldn't be put on trial if you were bleeding. So Jesus had just been badly beaten up, and they stick him in this pit, and from time to time they kind of lower him out to see if he was bleeding. And if you're still bleeding, they kind of put him back until he wasn't. And I suppose an Old Testament reflection for you is Psalm 88, which we always have read, and this year I'll sing. And actually this year Carly's going to sing it at the Maundy Thursday service this Thursday. And it's one of only 2 psalms in the Old Testament. There's 150 psalms. There's only 2 that don't have some sort of a happy ending. And he talks about, I am become as one in the pit. It's Psalm 88 verse 4. And have a look at some time, if you like, at Psalm 88. Read it through. That was Jesus' description of Jesus' experience, being counted as one going down to the pit. And Psalm 88 describes that sense of desolation that Jesus must have felt at that time, in the pit, waiting to be tried. And so they put him in this pit overnight, and I guess they keep lowering him up, pick him up, and see if he's not bleeding. And eventually, and they bring him out. And then the council arrives, and they start to put Jesus on trial. But what I think is interesting, actually, and I would suggest that as you read this from time to read the trial of Jesus, ask yourself the question: who's really on trial here? Who's really in charge? On the face of it, the authorities, the council, Pilate, Herod, whoever, they think, on the face of it, it looks as though they're in charge and Jesus is being taken from pillar to post. But read what Jesus says and ask yourself the question again: who's really in charge? And so, as I say, we're at Caiaphas' house, and the council begin their trial in earnest. Tell us, they say, are you the Son of God? Jesus' response is fascinating. If I told you, you wouldn't believe me. And if I ask you, you won't tell me what you think. So in a sense, he sees right through what they're about. And he says, but I will tell you this. You will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of God. Now that sounds a bit innocuous to us, because Jesus doesn't call himself the Son of God. He calls himself here the Son of Man. It sounds innocuous. But to those listening, they knew what he was talking about, because there's two Old Testament quotes that they'd know as well. The first one is Psalm 110, a psalm in the Old Testament which is heavily quoted in the New. Psalm 110. All this thing about at the right hand of God. So who's going to sit at the right hand of God here? Psalm 110 verse 1. The Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. In other words, the one who sits at the right hand of God is going to have enemies as his footstool. And what Jesus is saying here, effectively, and they know he's saying, is that he is going to have his enemies will be his footstool. Jesus is the king. He's the one sitting at the right hand of God. And the other thing is, that phrase, the Son of Man, comes from the book of Daniel, slightly obscure, Daniel chapter 7, starting to read at verse 13. As I watched in the night visions, I saw one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient One, and he was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship. Then all the peoples and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. Daniel chapter 7, reading there from verse 13. In other words, who's really in charge? Jesus is the Son of Man, the one who will be at the right hand of God, but one who also is going to have eternal dominion forever. So who's really in charge in all this? And so they try him, and they they twist his words around, and they accuse him of blasphemy. But unfortunately for them, they can't do anything about it, because they're simply the religious, and it was the Romans who were in charge at the time. So they take him to Pilate, Pontius Pilate, and they put all sorts of charges in front of him, and Pilate can't see a way through this at all. Pilate knows this man's innocent, because try as they might, they just can't get the charges to stack up. But Pilate's all confused, so he goes to Herod. And Herod has a go. Herod's been kind of looking forward to him out of interest. He wants to kind of find, perhaps he'd hoping to do some miracles, some conjuring trick for him or something like that. But he won't answer Herod either. So through the whole thing, on the face of it, Jesus is on trial, and they feel as though they're in charge. But read the trial of Jesus again and ask yourself the question, who's really on trial here? With the benefit of hindsight, who's the one that looks silly in retrospect? And with the benefit of hindsight, who's really in charge? The people who thought they were at time, or Jesus, the Son of Man, the King of Kings, the one we now know seated at the right hand of God, and the one who has eternal dominion forever and ever. Amen. God bless you, and I'll see you again over the weekend. And Sue will bring a